get you going, we have some very cheesy music, just to invoke the spirit of question time. So if Nimai could do that, just absorb it. And a warm welcome to you all. Alumni Question Time, transmitting live from Watford this evening. So we have with us a very esteemed guest on our panel today, His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj. So this is actually the third time that I've had the great opportunity to interview Maharaj. And it's kind of, this is going to keep falling, isn't it?
Hold it up.
The Crawley devotees, they're always on it, Practical advice. Shall I just hold it in my hand? Shall I just hold it? Yeah, I'll just hold it. Well, this is going really smoothly. David Dimbleby doesn't have to deal with this. So the first time that I met Maharaj was about 3 years ago for this particular interview series. And I asked him to explain the basic philosophies of Krishna consciousness. And we started the actual talk by saying, if you could explain it as an elevator pitch. So you go into an elevator and someone asks you for the first time, what is Bhakti Yoga? And Maharaj, and I gave him 30 seconds or less. And it was completely on the spot, there was no preparation. And he gave the most sublime answer. He said, who are we? Who is God? What is our relationship with God? What is our relationship with this world? And what is the goal of life? And in that first session, we elaborated on those basic tenets of what Bhakti Yoga is all about. And I wasn't really practicing then, but the next session, I was so inspired by Maharaj's association, I started practicing. But of course, as you know, when you start practicing, philosophical doubts start to rise in your head. And I had questions about karma, I had questions about the 3 modes of material nature, I had questions about the role of religion in society today. Because I'm always watching BBC, and I'm always watching politics, and I'm always wondering, is religion really a good thing or a bad thing? Because I see lots of negative connotations and reactions to religion, primarily because it causes division, and I think any kind of division is a bad thing. So Maharaj covered that, and he put away all of those concerns, and I highly recommend the YouTube recording for anyone who missed it the first time. So today here I am, and I'm now a practicing devotee, and I want to go deeper into the 5 most powerful processes of devotional service. So I went to my staple guide for Krishna consciousness, which is krishna.com, and that said to me that Lord Chaitanya, he explained to Rupa Goswami, his primary disciple, that there are 5 main processes. And I just would like to elaborate on those today, discuss those. I have some questions, and then because it's question time format, for those of you who haven't seen question time, it basically means opening up to the crowd based on that particular theme. Does that sound okay to all of you? Yeah? Before I start, can I take this off the thing, because there is a recorder. He's going to fix it. No pressure. I can just hold it. Krishna gave me hands. I'm happy to use them. So Maharaj, I wanted to begin with asking about the first process, which is of course chanting of the holy names. We're known as the Hare Krishna devotees. I heard that 95% of our advancement comes from this chanting of the holy name. Could you just explain a little bit about why the Maha Mantra? There are so many mantras. Why the Maha Mantra? Because I'm now at a stage where I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna doesn't actually mention the Maha Mantra unless I missed a verse. So please, if you could explain just why the Maha Mantra.
Well, thank you. Hare Krishna. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you, Nanda. I'm happy to be back with you again. And happy to see that you've become a devotee. It does boost my faith in question time and the process of asking and answering questions. But I want to say also that this is an age-old process, the process of questioning and getting answers. In fact, all our scriptures, the Vedic scriptures, the Puranas, the Bhagavad Gita, they're all based on questions and answers. So the format is excellent, and I commend you for sticking it out and for carrying on and asking such wonderful questions. So your question about the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is a valid one. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna doesn't exactly mention the Hare Krishna Mahamantra as we understand it. He speaks specifically, or in general terms rather, about chanting of his names or glorification of Krishna. But we get more specific information when that same Lord Krishna appears as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then he quotes, in his teachings there, he cites this verse from the Puranas. And specifically this verse appears in one of the Upanishads called the Kali Santaran Upanishad. The Upanishads are essentially philosophical texts, and in this particular one is meant especially for those who want to cross over this material ocean in this age of Kali Yuga. So Kali Santaran Upanishads is especially meant for devotees who want to transcend material existence and reach the spiritual realm. So this Mahamantra is specifically recommended there, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cites it in his teachings in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that's where it comes from.
Thank you. So does that mean it's not an eternal practice? It's only really relevant for now, in this particular age?
No, actually the chanting of the holy names are always relevant. However, in each of the 4 ages, as you're aware, there are 4 ages given in our scriptures. There's Satya Yuga, there's Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga. We are in the Kali Yuga, which is the last of the 4 ages, and these ages keep repeating cyclically. So each of these 4 ages has a prescribed method of deliverance from this age, a specific method for attaining spiritual perfection. And the methods were different in the earlier ages. In Kali Yuga, it's basically chanting the holy names of Lord Krishna. So even though it is the specific recommendation for this age, it doesn't mean that it wasn't valid in the early ages or that it didn't hold good. However, the point is that chanting of the holy names is such an easy process. Anyone can do it. It doesn't require any special qualifications. You don't have to be very austere. You don't have to be learned. You don't have to have a lot of money to be able to organize huge ceremonies and sacrifices and so on. Neither do you need to have the ability to renounce the world and then concentrate your mind and fast for days together from food. So these were accompanying characteristics or the requirements of the processes to achieve perfection in the earlier ages. Because the people then were actually so spiritually qualified, for them something challenging was needed. If those challenges are posed to us in this age in Kali Yuga, we would fail. We would not be able to reach that standard. And if today's process was given to people in those ages, they wouldn't be inspired at all. It's like a year 10 student in school getting an examination paper for year 1 or year 2 or something like that. That doesn't mean that the chanting of Hare Krishna is any less potent or any less glorious. But the point is that it can be done so easily by anyone without any qualification. And because in Kali Yuga people are generally unqualified, so it is specifically meant for this age. But in the earlier ages, even though it was valid, there were other processes which seemed more attractive and more challenging to the more qualified people at that time.
Okay.
Right?
This makes sense. You said that in this age, the process is actually very easy, and you don't need any qualification. You don't need money. Or, you don't need to fast. Many different things you listed out. I personally have been practicing, and I don't find it very easy. And I was just going to throw it out to the crowd. How many of you practice any type of meditation? You could just raise your hand. Okay. And how many of you specifically the chanting of the Maha Mantra? So quite a few of you. Now, if you could keep your hand raised if you find it easy. Interesting. Okay, so there's one person at the back. Thank you. Maharaj, you can speak on humility after.
He could be a pure devotee.
I was just joking. He is I actually know him. He's a wonderful devotee. So Maharaj, we can see from the crowd that actually, although you're saying it's a very easy process, the majority of us, other than the pure devotees at the back, do struggle with this sublime process. Could you explain, is it that we're not chanting right? Is there some reason for this?
Everything in this world is easier said than done. Isn't it? We just say, let's say, I'm just flying from here to New York, let's say. I'm not, we're just giving an example. Well, it's easier said than done. When I say it is over in one sentence. But when I actually have to do it, there are so many things. I have to get a visa, get the money to buy a ticket, go to the airport. The whole process of reaching New York is quite elaborate and requires a lot of application of mind and hard work. So similarly, naturally, with chanting of the holy names, it is easy, and yet it's not so easy, number one. Number two, when we speak of easy, as I said, it's because these extremely difficult qualifications are not required for the process of chanting the holy names. And secondly, we also speak of difficulty and ease in relative terms, compared to what the processes meant for the other ages are. For example, the process of sitting in meditation in the forest, having renounced the world, is extremely difficult. If chanting verbally, if chanting aloud is difficult, relatively, imagine how much more difficult it is to sit quietly in meditation without speaking anything and not falling asleep and not letting your mind wander. I remember going to a particular place many years ago where they did not fancy any verbal meditation. They only wanted mental meditation. And so we were going into their meditation room, and they made me even keep aside my chanting beads, which I did very reluctantly, but because I was with a host, therefore I didn't want to offend them. So I went inside out of curiosity, and it was a plush room with soft carpets, and it was air-conditioned. Outside there was sweltering heat, and then right in the middle you had to strain your eyes to see what there was inside. And there was a little faint glow in the center of the room. It was a huge room. And we had to move around because there were people sitting every here now and then. So finally we got a place and we sat down, and we were supposed to meditate silently. And as we sat down, and I was thinking, let me try to meditate in the mind, because anyway I'm not supposed to speak. So I was trying to do that with my breath. And then gradually, little by little, as my senses got used to that place, I started hearing these sounds coming from different places, from different directions. And the sounds were in the general category of so people were basically snoring, so much for meditation. It's not to say that everybody does that, but the point is, it is very difficult. Maybe a few highly qualified people can do it, but in general it's not. So if you find the process of chanting Hare Krishna difficult, imagine how difficult it is to just do silent meditation. So yes, any spiritual process that requires application, that requires concentration, effort is hard. But essentially the process is easy, and there are other things that we have to do in our lifestyle to facilitate that, to assist us to be able to chant better. Then it won't be that hard.
You mentioned about the silent meditation.
Silent meditation, yes.
It's actually growing popularity across the West, particularly with various apps that are now there. And this concept of mindfulness meditation in particular, where you essentially sit in silence and you focus on your breath. The meditation can be on anything. But it's very, very popular, and people find it very effective. And it's growing in popularity far more than the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, as far as I can see. What do you think the reason might be for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's because such meditation seems to be completely non-sectarian. It seems to be not connected with any religion. Because people have developed some kind of aversion to religion now because of so many things that go on in the name of religion. There's some kind of anathema people have in their minds. And it's becoming more and more, shall we say, cool to be spiritual but not religious. So this is a category of people. And like when you put down your religion in the religion column, when you fill in different types of forms and documents, nowadays it's become a trend, I believe, where people don't write a name for religion, they write SBNR, which means spiritual but not religious. So especially now this kind of meditation is popular because, as I said, there's no involvement of God, and particularly no God that's connected to any particular religion. People don't want to be affiliated to any particular faith or any organized religion. And so anyway, it sounds more universal, it sounds more cool, as I said, so that's why it's becoming more popular. But if you see, there's really not much of a philosophy behind what they do. But if you ask them what's the goal of life, a fundamental question like that, many of them perhaps don't know the answer. So this is the problem. So you see, any process of meditation must be eventually linked to the ultimate goal of realizing God, of self-realization. So unless there is a clear conception of what God is, what the absolute truth is, and that clear conception also has to be correct, by the way. There's no point in having a clear conception of something that's wrong. So when you have a clear conception of the absolute truth, then you have to devise your process of meditation accordingly, as given in the Shastra. Maybe devise is not the right word, but you have to adopt the process that's given in the scriptures to realize that goal. But when your goal is not clear, then you just do whatever is just most suitable and convenient to your mind. It may have beneficial effects in terms of some health, and does help to calm your mind and a few things and incidental benefits. But does it really help us develop any deeper spiritual understanding? So, whereas actually even chanting the holy names is a form of meditation. What is meditation actually? Meditation means to focus the mind on the Supreme Lord. That's really what meditation means. Meditation doesn't mean to focus the mind on just anything. And in some of these different types of meditation, maybe there are different varieties of them. Sometimes they may say you can meditate on anything. In the place that I referred to, they meditated on some light, a red light. Somebody may say just meditate on something else. So they just speculate, and they have different concocted methods of meditation. Whereas Krishna consciousness involves meditating on something very clear, very specific, Krishna. the supreme absolute truth. You meditate on him by chanting his names and hearing attentively, by hearing his messages and his pastimes, or worshipping his deity form, and so on. So it's something very tangible, something very attainable, and something very clear.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can relate to that. There's a big thing around mindful eating and meditating on your food. I don't think they mean prasad. And there's also beer yoga now.
Beer yoga?
Yeah, so they do different stances, and I'm not making this up. It's a big thing because they actually like to get into the experience of doing the poses. But yeah, anyway.
So that's exactly the point, that when you adopt a process without the philosophy, then you make your own philosophy, right? So you concoct whatever you want, because you think, so that's selective, cherry picking of something according to what suits you, and then devise your own thing and give it a fashionable or a cool twist. Tweak and then popularize it, and it's a hit with many people because people are not aware of the philosophy. So therefore Krishna consciousness is so important, because it gives people real philosophy. So as devotees we must make it a point to really learn this philosophy very well, side by side with actually practicing it, because philosophy means the theory as well as the practice. So even in order to do the practice better, we need to have a good understanding of the theory.
Wonderful.
Make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Just for the record, I've never tried beer yoga.
I'm relieved to hear that.
So I just wanted to take this opportunity to open up to the crowd now. So it's question time. So particularly any questions that you have around the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Any of you said you do it? Any questions? Marge?
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
This Mahaprabhu's movement is about Harinam.
Yes.
There seems to be a trend, if I'm mistaken, please correct me, that Harinam Naga Sankirtan is not so popular now. So maybe you could explain how or why that is.
Okay, your question is that Nagar Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan, which means going out into the streets chanting the holy names musically, congregationally, is the heart of Mahaprabhu's movement, but it doesn't seem to be so popular nowadays with devotees. Why is that? Well, actually, I went on one just yesterday to Luton, and it was a very nice experience. I went on one recently in Leicester as well. That was also a wonderful experience. So yes, I would encourage and invite all the devotees to go out on Harinam Sankirtan. Maybe we haven't emphasized it enough in our lectures, and maybe in our discussions. We speak about so many things. Perhaps yes, it should be talked up a little more. And it's a very exciting thing. It's very invigorating spiritually, and you get so much inspiration and encouragement in your own Krishna consciousness. And there's lots of people out there who are hungry and thirsty for Krishna consciousness. With so many people just standing, pausing, waiting, hearing, wondering what we are doing, what we were singing. And many of them were, recording it, some videos, some just snaps. Some came and started chanting with us and then went away. Of course, there were some who were not interested, but many were interested, many. Even people who, you could visibly see belong to a different religious faith or something like that. So we can see that this chanting of the holy names is very attractive to everyone, regardless of what kind of faith they profess. So yes, you are right, and I think we should encourage it more. We should have more Harinam Sankirtan going through the streets. This is Mahaprabhu's movement. So thank you for bringing it up.
Maharaj, few of us come from a scientific background, and it's seen as that everything that we see or want to believe has to be scientifically proven. And that's the unfortunate scenario of the scientists. So I tried to put this chanting of the holy name into the scientific process. So we have a theory, so we have a hypothesis, then we do an experiment, we do some observations, we look at the results and come to a conclusion. That's all science is about. So try to put the hypothesis as this chanting of the holy name, of course improves the spirituality, but that may be difficult to measure, but at least makes a person a better person. So we have seen a lot of devotees practicing for years, chanting the holy name, and we have seen how their hearts have changed, how they have become different people from what they were. So there is clear evidence in these results and observations that this does change people's hearts and makes people different. So the conclusion is that yes, this hypothesis works. So now we have a scientific explanation as well as, of course, the effect that we see. Why can't we make it more popular when there is enough to suggest that it is a bona fide process?
Indeed, programs like this are meant for that. And I think just as we have esteemed news anchors like Mr. Parkinson who are driving it and who are helping us to popularize it on television, so we should do more of this. We should try to talk it up, we should try to spread it, we should try to distribute the literature so that people can read it and hear it. We should have discussions at different levels, at different types of groups of people. Some are more scientifically inclined, we should have some sessions for them. Some are maybe more interested in chanting, we chant the holy names with them. And we have different approaches for different groups who are seeking higher spiritual truth. So yes, we should do more. Yes. Even for the scientific community, Srila Prabhupada definitely wanted that. And that's why he started the Bhaktivedanta Institute, specifically to target discussing these things with scientists. Prabhupada always maintained that Krishna consciousness is a science. It's actually a supreme science. It may not fit into the paradigm of science that modern scientists have, but you just gave a certain sequence which fits in perfectly well of observation, hypothesis, practice and verification. It fits in very well with the chanting of the holy names. So we should indeed do that more.
Nimai.
Maharaj, you had mentioned how people are averse to the Hare Krishna mantra because there's a religious relation attached towards that. Now I'm just picturing at my colleagues at work where meditation is being actively promoted. Now if I was to give them a choice between, silent breathing meditation versus Hare Krishna, immediately there would be an aversion to the Hare Krishna because there is a connotation, Hare Krishna's
Religious.
Religious. Now, at least in this present day and age where there is that sense of aversion to these religious practices, at least to myself, I see it as a more or less impossible task to even get people to adopt this form of meditation using the Hare Krishna mantra when there's a big rise in popularity of all the other forms. Kindly elaborate on how we could perhaps, I know you mentioned discuss it, but at least in the workplace.
Yeah, so your question is, in case it wasn't captured on the sound system, that it is getting increasingly difficult to persuade people to come to a program where there is a chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, or even to accept it in their life and chant, vis-a-vis, let's say, just silent meditation with your breathing. So what could we do to increase the acceptance of mantra meditation? Yes? Well, you specifically refer to your office situation. Yes? Perhaps before we bring them to the point of actually meditating on mantra, on the Hare Krishna mantra, we could start preliminary sessions for them where you talk about the philosophy, because everyone has a thirst for knowledge, everyone wants to know something. And when you present the knowledge in a very systematic way, in a way that appeals to their intellect and their understanding, then they begin to get curious and they get a little more faith, perhaps the reservations diminish a little bit, and then you can persuade them to take to the next step and the next step, etc. So that's one process. At the same time, I must also say that there are some people who don't like philosophy so much, and they'd rather just go to some musical chanting and so on. And that's also becoming popular to some degree, because there are some people who made the chanting of Hare Krishna very popular. They may not be devotees in our sense, or they may be, I don't know. But they popularize it a lot, and their concerts are well attended, So yes, but there, because the philosophy behind it, we don't know what it is. So we'd rather, while we want quantity, we definitely want people to come, but we also want to ensure that we give them the proper philosophy. So even if we don't have that many people at this time, it's all right. We should make our efforts, but we should not dilute our presentation. We should not dilute our philosophy. And we should try to ensure that we give them the real message, but in a way that's palatable to them, that they can understand and relate to. And Krishna anyway has said in the Bhagavad Gita that this message will not be appreciated by everybody. There will be very few people who will actually relate to it. So we have to work within that limitation. Okay?
Any of the ladies have anything particularly on the holy name? No? If not, then at the back I'm intrigued to hear your question.
Thank you for your answer so far, Maharaj. So, from the perspective of comparative religion and in pursuance of a common ground, we understand that the Hare Krishna perspective is actually quite inclusive. And when we're talking about the Maha Mantra, we see that many other traditions also have some form of praising God or calling upon names. However, sometimes I find it problematic in that we seem very exclusivist by saying that Harinam Eva Kevalam, only calling upon Harinam is the only way. So in kind of bringing all that together, what is the results of other religious practices which seem very genuine, and they're calling upon God in many different names, or sometimes not even in such a personal way, but where are they going to go? Can we feel that it's on the same level? Sorry, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but yeah, if you could comment on that.
Okay, that's a good question. Your question is that from a comparative religion point of view, that all religions include some injunctions on chanting the names of God.